1 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions toward real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you very much. I have a motion moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Clark. Be it resolved that Planning Council agenda dated October 11, 2023 be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest?
Oh, yes, I do have one.
Councillor Morrison?
Thank you, Councillor Stone. I'll just pull up the actual file number so I have it right. Bear with me.
Is it the Wolf application?
It is. It's,
41 Florence?
That's the one, yeah. Perfect.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any others? All right. Seeing none. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public portion of the meeting to consider applications to amend the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97 pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. The procedure of the public meeting will be as follows. A brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and any correspondence received to date will be given by staff. The applicant or the representative will be asked to provide any additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Any members of the public present, in person or electronically, will then be permitted to ask questions or provide comments respecting the applications. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the planner, or anyone giving presentations. Once the public meeting is concluded, the input received and the proposed amendments will be considered by Council. Any persons making representation are requested to first state their name and mailing address. Please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Please be informed that an appellant must provide an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission prior to the passage of the CPP bylaw amendment. Otherwise, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. If you wish to be notified of the passage of a bylaw, you must file either with the recording secretary or with the clerk a written request for notification prior to the passage of the proposed bylaw. Each notice of complete application and public meeting, including an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment, and notice was required to be posted at the subject lands. Notice was therefore considered to have been provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and applicable sections of the Huntsville Official Plan. And with that, Madeline, you're going to speak to the first application, the Archer application on Yearly Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is located at 946 Yearly Road. The lot is designated waterfront in Huntsville's official plan and is under the waterfront residential 120-meter precinct with a natural constraints 1 overlay in the community planning permit bylaw. The applicant proposes to recognize the existing accessory structures as the primary use on the property. The community planning permit bylaw amendment would add an exception to the existing waterfront residential precinct on the lot. The purpose of the exception would be to recognize 3 9.5 square meter private cabins as the only permitted principal use on the lot, and recognize 4 existing accessory structures, including a 10.5 square meter gazebo, a 9 square meter picnic shelter, a 17.5 square meter sauna, and a 6.5 meter privy as the only permitted accessory structures. The existing structures were placed on the property starting in 1991. The sauna was constructed in 2015. None of the structures were placed on the property with the benefit of planning approvals or building permits. Access to the property is through a right-of-way that runs off of Yearly Road and services the subject property and 2 additional properties to the west. The waterfront residential precinct only permits single detached dwellings as of right. Accessory structures are only permitted once the principal building has been constructed, with the exception of a dock and an approved sewage system. Functionally, the existing private cabins and accessory structures, when taken together, are similar to one dwelling unit. However, no individual structure could be considered as a primary dwelling. Portions of the property also contain a Natural Constraints 1 overlay, which has identified wetlands. Development restrictions apply wherever the Natural Constraints overlay has been identified. Development in this instance is required to maintain a 30-meter buffer from natural heritage features and areas. The waterfront designation identifies and describes the overall low-density shoreline area, which is composed of recreational residential dwellings, waterfront commercial, open space uses, and limited year-round residential dwellings, and is related to the recreational, tourism, ecotourism, and aesthetic opportunities presented by a significant water resource. The existing structures maintain the low-density character of the waterfront designation while preserving the natural environment, as they have been constructed a sufficient distance away from the shoreline. The natural shoreline has been retained and kept undisturbed, as it contains mature, dense vegetation. The existing structures blend into the natural landscape and are contained within a small area on the lot. Development in the waterfront area will generally be serviced by private individual on-site water services and individual on-site sewage services. In this instance, the subject lands are serviced by a privy, also considered an outhouse, and privy structures are covered under Class 1 sewage systems in the Ontario Building Code and do not require a building permit. However, the structure is required to meet setbacks and bylaw provisions. As previously mentioned, natural constraint mapping has identified 2 wetlands on the property, including Golden City Lake and a smaller wetland internal to the property. Where development is proposed in close proximity, being 30 meters or less to a wetland, a technical report may be required by the town in order to ensure that the integrity of the wetland is preserved, identify how development can appropriately be accommodated, and identify if any mitigation measures could be implemented. In this instance, there is no new development being proposed near the wetlands identified on the site. However, it has not been confirmed whether the existing structures maintain a suitable buffer to the smaller internal wetland feature on the site. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. One letter of concern was received by a neighboring property owner and was included in the report package. An additional letter was received yesterday and circulated to council prior to this meeting. Both letters address concerns respecting a potential building encroachment on the right-of-way, wetland protection, and safety. Staff requested that the applicant provide additional information to address these matters, and this information is forthcoming. District of Muskoka staff reviewed the application and have provided no objection, and this application has been brought forward for information only. Staff are recommending that a survey be completed to confirm the location of the existing structures on the property, specifically to determine if any of the structures are within the right-of-way. And staff also recommend a wetland assessment be conducted to identify any required mitigation measures given the proximity of the structures to a wetland on site. Once this information has been provided, staff will be in a position to provide a recommendation in relation to this application. Thank you for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments. If you could pull it to you as well. Yep, perfect.
So good afternoon, Chair and Planning Council. My name is Melissa Markham, Melissa Markham Planning and Associates, 1025 Rebecca Lane, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H2J6. And I'm here today on behalf of the owners of the subject lands of 946 Yearly Road. So I was retained by the owners to assist with the planning application to recognize the existing structures on the subject lands. And through discussions with the town, it was determined a zoning bylaw amendment application would be required, as no principal dwelling is constructed on the subject lands. Over the past few months, the owners have worked with staff to submit the application, and staff recommended the report today be brought forward for information purposes, as there have been comments received from the public regarding the subject lands. I provided a planning justification report in support of recognizing the existing development. However, the purpose of today's meeting is to gather comments from the public and allow the owners to respond and provide any additional information that may be required through today's meeting. As the staff report sets out, you've heard about the subject lands, the lot area, and I won't duplicate any of the information that you've had here today. Would state the subject lands are heavily wooded, and the structures were mostly constructed in the early 1990s, including the outhouse, which is in question, which was in 1991. The character of the surrounding area is residential. The residential use of the subject lands is not in question. I think it's mentioned in the report as well. If all the structures were connected as one building, the development on the subject lands could be much higher than it is currently. However, that is not how the owners wish to use their property. The zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted to recognize existing development on the subject lands only, and no development is proposed through the application. The provincial policy statement, District of Muskoka official plan, Town of Huntsville official plan, and community planning permit bylaw were reviewed and included in the planning report submitted in support of the application. The owners and I have reviewed the staff report and the comments received from agencies and the public. I believe the staff report provides an accurate description of their proposal, which is to recognize the existing use of the subject lands. And as today's meeting is to seek input from the public prior to staff bringing a recommendation report to council, we are here to listen to any additional comments and will seek to address these through a resubmission. We've reviewed the comments that have been submitted to the town to date, and the comments received are mainly in regards to the right-of-way and the outhouse. I believe the staff reports address the privy, which is classified as a Class 1 sewage system. And as for the right-of-ways, the owners have retained a surveyor to review documents, and there's no challenge at this point with regards to whether the right-of-way is actually in existence. We've also noted that the staff provided next steps in the report to request information which was not previously requested through the pre-consultation. And this is to discuss with regards to a wetland study and also a survey. The owners are open to continue to work with the town to address concerns raised today. So once again, thank you for bringing the application forward. And as I stated, we're here to listen to any additional comments that are raised today through the application. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. I will go to members of the public who are present that may wish to speak to this application. Please come on down, sir. Again? There you go. You're on.
Okay, great. My name is Wayne McGee. I live at 950 Yearly Road. I am just to the west of the subject property. And as I look at the site plan, I am concerned about the dimensions, the setback, whether they're going to be, if they're going to be surveyed, then I'm happy. My deed shows that the right-of-way is 66 feet, and I don't know if that's been established properly or not, but I'd like to see that established properly. And setbacks, we already talked about those, so I'm fine with that. That's
Wonderful.
That's
Thanks very much.
Thank
If
you.
you could just sign that paper next to you, that'd be great. And actually, I'll ask Madeline to speak to the right-of-way.
Sure. Through you, Chair Stone. So the right-of-way comes off of Yearly Road and services the three properties to the west of Yearly Road.
All right.
Do you want?
And do we know the width?
So generally, rights-of-ways for access purposes are 66 feet wide. Yeah, that's a standard.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other members of the public present that wish to speak to this application? come on down. It's like the Price is Right.
Thank you. My name's Matt Kirschner. I live at 938 Yearly Road. It would be the property on the south side of the right-of-way easement, and my concerns are very similar to Wayne's in respect to keeping that right-of-way, free and clear of obstructions. And, I know you guys have all read the report in respect to the other concerns, and just to kind of reiterate those, I'd like to make sure everything is above board and the way it needs to be.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. And if you could sign the paper as well. Anyone else who is present that would like to speak to this? I see none. I will ask anybody electronically to raise your electronic hand and let us know you'd like to speak.
Chair Stone, I see one hand raised.
All right, if you can bring them in. Hello there.
Hi, my name is Jean McGee. I have a property at 950 Yearly Road. I'm Wayne's wife. One of the main things that I'm worried about is safety and also environmental protection. I would like to see the buildings inspected for plumbing, electrical safety, fire hazards. None of them were built with permits, so I think they need to be inspected. I'm concerned about where the gray water and black water is going. Don't want to see anything going into the water table. I also feel a site plan survey is essential because the sketch doesn't have any indications about how far away the buildings are from the boundaries, and we believe that there's some infractions there. I think that's all. There's a fire pit that's larger than the 2 feet by 2 feet fire code. So I'm concerned about fire and any other safety problems with the property. If everything can be brought up to code, can be checked to make sure there's no safety hazards, if everything could be within the bylaw boundaries, I don't have a problem with the individual buildings, but I do want to make sure everything is within those boundaries and far enough away from the water. And for example, the outhouse, I don't want to see anything going into the water table or into the lake or the wetlands. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. Are there any other electronic hands that are out there to be heard?
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you. Members of council, I see Mayor Alcock would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just very quickly, through you to Madeline, there are a couple of comments about the right-of-way, and if you could respond to that. I don't think this application will have an impact on the right-of-way, or if you could speak to that, that would be great.
So through you, Chair Stone. So one of the main reasons we're asking for the survey is to confirm that there's no structures built on the right-of-way, just because that hasn't been entirely confirmed. From the site plan that was provided, it appears that there aren't structures on the right-of-way. However, hearing the neighborhood concern that there are, we just want confirmation on that.
That's great. A follow-up, yeah, so that also will answer the second or the third comment there about the more detailed site plan, which will be available. Okay, that's great, thank you.
Any other comments from council? Madeline, do we have any concerns with the outhouse and the, any contamination with the groundwater or the wetlands?
So as mentioned in the report and through discussion, from a wetland, you are required to maintain a 30-meter buffer. Now, at the time that that outhouse was in place, the wetland hasn't been delineated to today also, so we don't know where exactly that wetland is. So further information on that is what we're requesting also. And then through any type of report, it could be determined whether or not it's appropriate for that structure to be in its existing location.
Wonderful, thanks. Any other questions? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I tend to agree with staff's recommendations that we do get a survey done. And obviously you've been in contact with the building department as well, and are they taking any remedies here or that we're aware of, or do we know?
Madeline?
So through you, Chair Stone, as mentioned, the outhouse or privy would be a class 1 sewage disposal, so it wouldn't require a building permit. So I believe it's actually the ministry that gets involved with permits for privy structures.
In reference to any other structures on the property, does building department have any interest there? I guess is my question.
Oh, sorry. Yes, those would require inspections and permits. And we would be looking at that through the process. Through the amendment, we can't enforce conditions, but because it's a waterfront property, they would require a community planning permit application after the amendment, if it were to be approved. And then through that, we can make that a condition that they do get their permits.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you, Chair Stone. I concur with staff report as well. I think firstly, just to get the survey, and then you say a wetland assessment are the two things that we need going forward, and then we can go from there into the next steps. Perfect.
Seeing no other questions, there's no motion on this because it's for information, so we'll move on to the next application, the STED application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, the subject property is located at 1130 Harp Lake Road. The lot is designated rural in Huntsville's official plan and is under the rural precinct with the Natural Constraints 1 overlay in the Community Planning Permit bylaw. An application was submitted for a Community Planning Permit bylaw amendment to change the precinct on the lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential precinct. A concurrent consent application was submitted to facilitate the creation of the new rural residential lot. The proposed severed lot would have a minimum area of approximately 2 hectares and 193 meters of frontage on Harp Lake Road, and the retained lands would have an area of approximately 2 hectares with 202 meters of frontage on Harp Lake Road. As discussed in the report, the amendment to change the precinct from rural to rural residential would permit a smaller required lot size. New lots within the rural residential precinct are required to have a minimum lot frontage of 134 meters and a minimum lot area of 2 hectares. Both the severed and retained lands would meet the minimum frontage and area requirements. Natural Constraint 1 has been identified on the property as Deer Wintering Area Stratum 1. The deer wintering habitat assessment prepared by Palmer has identified that the property contained evidence of low to moderate deer tracks and is likely that the lot is being used for movement or foraging purposes and is more aligned with the Stratum 2 classifications. The report recommends that the footprint for future developments and vegetation removal will need to be as minimal as possible. Additionally, wildland fire hazard has also been identified on the property. And, as mentioned in the report. A 5126 agreement has been added as a condition of the consent application to require the lands to be subject to a community planning permit prior to any site alteration or development in order to address the findings in the deer wintering habitat assessment and to identify the location of the proposed development in relation to the wildland fire hazard. Additionally, the proposed severed and retained lots would be in keeping with both the significant wildlife habitat policies and rural policies of the official plan as outlined within the report. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and Community Planning Permit Bylaw. District staff noted that they would not be opposed to the approval of the application, provided that the recommendations and mitigation measures outlined in the deer wintering habitat assessment prepared by Palmer are implemented. The applications appear to meet the intent of the official plan and are consistent with the provincial policy statement, and therefore staff are recommending approval. Thank you for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. So call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments. Good afternoon, Mr. Dennis. Oh, you're on. No, try it again. There you go.
Oh, I had it right the first time. Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Lanny Dennis Planning, Box 254, Novar, Ontario, P0A1R0. Had an opportunity to review the report and listen to the planner's presentation. I think that's a fair and accurate assessment of the proposal. Appreciate the efforts of staff bringing the application forward and concur with the Planning Department to approve the application. I have no issue with respect to the recommended conditions on the consent. I think the merits of the proposal are essentially, it conforms to the frontage and area of the official plan. We had a deer wintering assessment completed, indicated it was stratum 2, so limited impact on the deer wintering area. They're large lots. I think it can quite comfortably accommodate a new dwelling and a septic system. There's the zoning, precinct is being changed from rural to rural residential, so it reduces the number of rural uses and makes it more compatible with the existing residential development. Property is generally fairly flat, and it's well vegetated with existing mature tree cover, and I think adding a couple homes in there can blend in quite nicely with the natural environment and protect the deer yard. District staff and the agency had no concerns, so hopefully, and respect the request, committee approved the application. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'll ask members of the public present to make any comments if they wish. I see none. Anyone electronically, you would need to raise your electronic hand.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thanks very much. Then council members. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone. Just a quick question. When looking at the pictures, it looks like the sight lines are pretty good on each direction, so there wouldn't be any issues with getting any driveway permits, et cetera, for that area.
Through you, Chair Stone, thank you for that. Our operations department hasn't had a chance to comment on that, but as the frontages do meet, or they exceed what our minimum requirements are, there shouldn't be any issues for sight lines.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you to Madeline. Just a question about the Natural Heritage Information Center. They said there was a species at risk that's actually on the property as well. Can you comment on what that could be and who does that study? So 2 questions.
So it was an environmental consultant that did the study. It's Palmer is the name of the firm. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, they do both? They both, the actual, the deer wintering habitat they do as well as the other, it's called
Sorry.
an NHIC, that was in the report.
Sorry, I'm just going to take a second to reference it.
Okay. If I can find. If I may, Chair Stone, I was just curious what other species would be on there that are at risk. That was really the.
So that, if there were, it would have been identified through the Palmer report, but none were outlined.
Nope.
No additional species were
Okay.
outlined.
They said there was.
Director Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair Stone. The NHIC that the District of Muskoka references are grids that are, I believe they're a kilometer square of areas that may contain habitat that may have species associated with it. And so it's sort of a blanket statement, and in some instances, there are something that has been identified over the years, but in this instance, if the Palmer review didn't find anything, then it would be okay.
Any other comments from council? All right, seeing none. Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment, CPPA 08-2023 HTE. The purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential precinct, all to permit the creation of one new residential lot. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. All right. Now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications to be concluded. We will now move to the non-public portion of the meeting. And Madeline's sticking with us here. A second STED application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 1020 Harp Lake Road. The lot is designated rural in Huntsville's official plan and is under the rural precinct with the Natural Constraints 1 overlay in the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. An application has been made for a Class 3 community planning permit to reduce the minimum required lot frontage for a new rural lot from 134 meters to 60 meters. A concurrent consent application has been submitted for the creation of the new rural lot. The proposed severed lot would have a minimum lot area of approximately 4 hectares and 60 meters of frontage on Harp Lake Road, and the retained lands would have an area of approximately 5.5 hectares with 60 meters of frontage on Harp Lake Road. New lots within the rural precinct are required to have a minimum lot frontage of 134 meters and a minimum lot area of 4 hectares. Both the severed and retained lots would meet the minimum required lot area, but require a variation to the required frontage. Variations to the community planning permit are addressed and evaluated against 5 criteria as mentioned in the report. Overall, the reduction to the required lot frontage is not appropriate for the subject lands, as permitted uses on rural properties are generally supported by greater lot frontages and areas. The applicants have not demonstrated that a new lot with a reduced frontage can support rural development and maintain the significant wildlife habitat or natural constraints on the site. Additionally, the proposed rural lot would not be compatible with surrounding land uses, and the reduced lot frontage would not be compatible with surrounding properties, as the area is characterized by large lots with frontages ranging between 120 meters to 450 meters, with a range of rural uses. In regards to the official plan, the proposal does not meet the rural lot policies. To protect rural character and encourage growth that is compatible with existing and planned rural infrastructure, as well as valuable natural resources, fragmentation of rural lands into small land holdings is discouraged. The subject lands were created in 2007 when the original parcel of land was severed into 4 new parcels within this area. The proposal would contribute to fragmentation as it would continue to separate rural lands into smaller land holdings. Natural constraints on the site have been identified as wetlands, sloping of various degrees, and deer wintering area stratum 1. To address the natural constraints on the lot, Palmer was retained to provide a deer wintering habitat assessment for the proposed new lot creation. The report states that portions of the subject lands support the core areas of stratum 1 habitat, primarily within an identified valley corridor, and should be retained to support the habitat. This was identified within the western portion of the property and is recommended to be a high constraint to development, shown in the color pink on the figure on the screen. The eastern area not associated with the valley is associated with stratum 2 habitat, and this is shown in yellow on the screen. The report recommended that future development should occur in accordance with section B 2.5.8 of the official plan. This section states that new lot creation in stratum 2 habitat should be restricted to single detached dwellings on lots which would have a minimum lot dimensions of 90 meters by 90 meters, as well as a minimum area of 1 hectare. The permitted uses on the property would not be limited to only the development of a single detached dwelling. Uses within the rural area may not be compatible with the identified natural constraints. Additionally, the proposed severed and retained lots would not meet the 90-meter frontage as the policy states, and therefore would not be in keeping with the significant wildlife habitat protection policies of the official plan, nor be able to meet the requirement contained within the Palmer report. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. District staff noted that they would not be opposed to the approval of the applications, provided that recommendations and mitigation measures outlined in the deer wintering habitat assessment are implemented. It should be noted that the proposal has not implemented the findings of the deer wintering assessment, so it would not appear that the proposal would be consistent with the Muskoka official plan. Through staff's review and analysis, the application would not appear to meet the applicable criteria for approval under the CPP bylaw, nor be consistent with the provincial policy statement. As such, staff are recommending denial of the applications. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make comments about this.
Good afternoon, once again. Lanny Dennis Planning. I represent the owner. Appreciate the efforts and assistance of staff bringing the application forward. Had an opportunity to review the report and listen to the presentation. I just want to provide my comments and opinion on the application. I think from what I gleaned from the presentation and the comments, I think there's one central issue to the project or the proposal, and it relates to the frontage on the property. It's going from 134 meters to 60 meters. Just wanted to offer some merits of the proposal in reducing the frontage. It's an obvious one, but I think the road deviation, obviously it's because of natural constraints, but it deviates past the property. If it had continued on like most properties in the area, it would have ran right by the frontage of this particular piece of property. And I think depending on the siting of the dwelling on the property, the road may act as a benefit as it deviates away from the property, which may help mitigate the visual impact from any new dwelling that may be constructed on the property. I think it does reflect the character of the area. I think that there's dwellings along that stretch of road. They are single-family dwellings, so I think from that perspective, from a use perspective, it does. With respect to the frontage on the property, there are smaller frontages along Ena Drive, which is close to the subject lands, albeit they are waterfront. They do have smaller lots. There's also smaller lot frontages along Harp Lake Road to the south and to the northwest and to the north. So just taking a look at, when I did the analysis initially, I looked at about 32 properties, and I came up with an average frontage of about 212 feet. I think that the lot sizes can quite comfortably accommodate the septic dwelling and a driveway on the property. I think that given the size of the lots, being 10 acres, in excess of 10 acres, can quite comfortably do that. And also address any deer wintering habitat issues. They're well vegetated with existing mature tree cover, generally flat, save and except the valley land, so it's conducive for development. I think that the deer wintering assessment that was completed, I don't think the conclusion in there was to prohibit or to indicate that development couldn't proceed. I think they're indicating that there be no negative impact, albeit, and it does say should be, restricted to single-family dwellings. And quite frankly, to address some of the other comments in the staff report, I would be prepared, and I'm just trying to understand the new process, to have the property zoned with a new precinct, such as the one to the north, under the rural residential zone category. Certainly the new lots, or the new lot would facilitate new housing, which, as we know, is an extreme demand, adds to the tax base, and would pay for a road that already exists that runs by the property. There was no district, the District of Muskoka is not opposed to the application, and there was no other comments that had any objection to the project. I think that any entrances along there could be a condition, could be imposed that we, have Public Works take a look at the entrance locations to ensure that they're safe to get to the site. And I think that, given what I've suggested, there is a policy in the town's official plan that indicates that approvals can move forward, provided that any deviations to the numerical values are generally in keeping with the official plan and sort of restricted in nature. So that's why I was suggesting that, moving forward, if you could do a rural residential zone, it would, make the property more compatible with the residential area, and also address, the valley lands. Perhaps that could be put in some sort of a conservation or environmental protection zone. And at the same time, we could specifically identify where a building envelope could be on that particular piece, on those particular pieces of property. And it would be certainly not in the pink area, but it would be in the yellow area, and I think there's lots of land there available that could accommodate a dwelling. Anyways, those are my comments, and hopefully we can move forward with an approval of the application. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Planning Council, any comments or questions? Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you both for all of your comments, Madeline for your report, and Lanny for your comments. I think actually, Lanny, you summarized a number of the things I was going to say, because I do treat very seriously all of the things you said, Madeline. But I kept going through, and I recognize that the primary issue really is the frontage, because I think all of the issues around deer wintering and other constraints can be mitigated. And I do like the idea of what Lanny's suggesting with respect to identifying the building envelope, because I think that would also address a couple of things. I was going through your comments, Madeline, and with respect to character of the surrounding neighborhood, and I looked from the map, and it looked like this actually sort of fits within, with the exception of the frontage, but then again, there are even other parcels that have a similar frontage. I'm compelled because of the size of the lots. They're substantial lots. And so I was one years ago who was concerned about fragmentation, so I'm glad we're still talking about that. But I don't think this is one of those cases. Yes, you'd have two driveways that are closer together, but they go into these substantially large lots. And so if we had control over where the building envelope is, you wouldn't necessarily see that from the road, I'm assuming. So I actually am not opposed to this as long as we have those conditions in where, much like the district's letter saying they're not opposed, as long as we deal with deer wintering and the other environmental issues that were raised. I think it is reflective of the neighborhood, and I appreciate why you had to recommend what you did, but I would not be opposed to approving this application.
Thanks very much. Councilor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone. And through you, I would concur with Mayor Alcock and her comments. I had a hard time looking at this originally because of the road frontage, the 60 meters. Visually, because I'm a visual person, I look at it, it looks like it is larger, but because it does not conform to the Harp Lake Road piece of property. My question is, who owns that piece of property? Or I know it's not relevant right now, but is that something that, if that little piece of property was contained within the other piece, we wouldn't have an issue here, would we?
Through you, Chair Stone, I believe it's a private landowner. I don't know if Lanny knows different.
Thank you. Okay. No, I would agree with allowing this to go through as well. I think, given the size of the property, and I did note within the district report, they did say they approved it, but that's where that the NHIC comes in. That's where I saw that originally, so the endangered species. But if that's taken care of, mitigated, then I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair Stone. As Mayor Alcock mentioned, the district staff aren't opposed to approving the application if their winning recommendations are implemented. And I don't have a problem with this application either. As was mentioned, it's over 9 acres. It's a huge lot. So I have no problem with this application to approve it.
Any other questions or comments from council? Nothing? All right, I would entertain an amendment if you wish.
I would so
Otherwise,
move an amendment.
You would so move, and you have a seconder?
I-
All right, thank you. So I will read the original motion. This is the original? Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that Planning Council deny Community Planning Permit Application CPP 101 2023 HTE. The purpose and effect of which is to provide relief from subsection 4.8.4 of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97 as amended to reduce the minimum required frontage for a new rural lot from 134 meters to 60 meters. And with that, I have an amendment moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that the following word be deleted, deny, and that the following words be inserted in its place, provisionally approve. And further that, the following conditions be added. A final site plan drawing being submitted to the satisfaction of the town to illustrate the layout of the proposed development on the lands in accordance with the relevant standards of the CPP bylaw, except as varied through this application with the following clearly illustrated. Identify an appropriate development envelope, driveway location, septic, and well location in accordance with the recommendations outlined in the deer wintering habitat assessment prepared by Palmer, dated June 23, 2023. All exterior lighting being dark sky compliant in accordance with the Town of Huntsville Outdoor Lighting Bylaw 2016-3 is amended. Appropriate erosion and sediment control measures shall be installed prior to construction and maintained until all disturbed areas have been stabilized, and all disturbed areas shall be stabilized and restored to existing conditions or better immediately upon completion of the works. Any question about the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? And all in favor of the main motion as amended? And that's carried. Thank you for that. All right. Madeline, you're still up with the Plowright Lane application.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Through you, the subject property is located at 105 Plowright Lane. The lot is designated waterfront in Huntsville's official plan and is under the waterfront residential 120-meter precinct in the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. The application has been submitted to permit the construction of a 50 square meter addition and a 10 square meter porch to the existing legal non-conforming single detached dwelling and recognize the existing sauna on the lot. A Class 3 community planning permit is required to increase the maximum permitted shoreline activity area width from 9.5 meters to 15 meters for a 50 square meter addition to an existing 63 square meter legal non-complying single detached dwelling. Reduce the setback from a cold water lake from 30 meters to 9 meters for a 50 square meter addition to an existing 63 square meter legal non-complying single detached dwelling. Reduce the setback from a cold water lake from 30 meters to 15 meters for a 10 square meter attached porch. Permit an expansion to an existing 63 square meter legal non-complying single detached dwelling. Reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 9 meters for a 50 square meter addition. Reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 15 meters for a 10 square meter attached porch. Increase the maximum permitted primary lot coverage from 5% to 7.5% for a 50 square meter addition and 10 square meter attached porch, and recognize the location of an existing 10 square meter sauna. Provisional approval of the application would be conditional on the owner entering into an agreement with the town, including financial securities, to confirm that development will proceed in accordance with the community planning permit, a building permit being submitted to address the sauna, a demolition permit being submitted for the private cabin, and the following revisions being made to the drawing. A note being added to specify construction sequencing and to clarify that the development will proceed as additions to the existing non-complying building only and may only include demolition and reconstruction of those portions of the existing building connected to the addition. A note being added that the owner will install a residential fire sprinkler system to address the comments received by the fire department. A note being added to label the private cabin as to be removed. And additional planting and tree retention areas being shown within 30 meters of the shoreline frontage. Upon the conditions of provisional approval being fulfilled, a Class 3 community planning permit would be issued to authorize the development conditional on items 1 to 5 as shown on the screen. Variations to the community planning permit are addressed and evaluated against 5 criteria. Non-complying structures are bound to their footprint, size, and height. The 50 square meter addition and 10 square meter porch will not worsen the existing non-complying front yard setback and will not exceed the height of the existing dwelling. The addition has been designed to be modest in scale to fit appropriately on the property and be screened from view from Lake Wasiosa and neighboring properties due to the existing mature vegetation. Additionally, vegetation removal is not required to facilitate the addition or porch. Vegetation will be added within the shoreline buffer area. The proposal appears to be compatible with the surrounding land uses, character, and maintains existing site characteristics while improving shoreline conditions. The existing shoreline buffer contains the dwelling, attached deck, dock, fire pit, and areas of clear of vegetation. In this case, the maximum permitted shoreline activity area width is 9.5 meters. As the existing structures within the shoreline buffer already exceed this at 17.4 meters, the existing fire pit area will be relocated outside of the buffer area and cleared portions will be revegetated. With the proposed portions to be relocated and revegetated, the shoreline activity area would decrease to 15 meters. Recognizing the existing sauna on the property is appropriate to record the orientation, size, and location of the structure. The sauna was placed on the property most recently in 2021, and the sauna does not meet the 20-meter front yard setback or 30-meter cold water lake setbacks as required in the provisions of the CPP bylaw. The sauna is buffered from neighboring properties by dense vegetation, which assists in mitigating noise and maintaining privacy. In regards to the private cabin on the lot, a maximum of one may be erected with a lot area of no less than 0.4 hectares, which is approximately 1 acre. In this instance, the lot is not of a suitable size to support a private cabin. Private cabins were not permitted as of right until 2008, and no information is available to when the private cabin was constructed on the property. Therefore, it is not considered legal non-complying and will be removed. The proposed addition will maintain the low-density development of the waterfront area, maintain mature vegetation, recognize an existing accessory structure, and implement measures to ensure the shoreline buffer and reduce negative impacts to water quality. Natural constraints on the site have been identified as Type 2 fish habitat and Lake Wasiosa as being a cold water lake. Development of existing lots abutting Type 2 fish habitat require a 20-meter setback and a 15-meter natural vegetative buffer maintained directly adjacent to the shoreline. Development other than permitted shoreline structures is required to be set back a minimum of 30 meters from cold water lakes. The proposed addition and porch will not meet either of these setbacks or buffers. An environmental impact assessment prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions was prepared to assess the proposal in regards to these natural constraints. The potential impacts of the development are expected to be minimal, assuming appropriate mitigation measures are taken and the shoreline buffer is revegetated as shown in the report. To mitigate construction-related impacts, proper construction practices and naturalization of the shoreline buffer is recommended. Where it is not possible to achieve a 30-meter setback, and where there will not be negative environmental or visual impacts, the official plan contains policy which allows a lesser setback to be considered where on-site phosphorus management and impact mitigation measures are implemented. In this instance, the existing dwelling position contributes to the inability to meet the required setbacks. The septic is being moved such that the tank will be 23 meters from the shoreline and the septic bed will be 45 meters from the shoreline. Works to revegetate the shoreline and retain existing vegetation are also included. Additionally to shoreline revegetation works are recommended up to the 30-meter setback, which will assist in providing a substantial buffer to offset the encroachments. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and Community Planning Permit Bylaw. District staff provided comments and they would not be opposed to the approval of the application, provided that the appropriate development control techniques are used to implement the recommendations in the environmental impact study. And through staff's review and analysis, the application would appear to meet the applicable criteria for approval under the Community Planning Permit Bylaw and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. As such, staff are recommending provisional approval of the application with the suggested conditions prior to full approval. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, yeah, there you go, you're on.
Good, okay. I'm the agent, Brianna Allen. Address is Unit 2, 1107 Muskoka Beach Road, Gravenhurst. Thank you, Madeline, for the presentation. One thing I'd like to note is it is noted in there that the sauna was built in 2021. And although there wasn't a permit pulled, we do believe it is later than that. The owners purchased the property in 2021 and the sauna was existing when purchased. If you look at the aerial views that are available on the GeoHub, it is clearly on the site in 2013. The 2008, it looks to be there as well, but the photos become a little bit more vague, so I wouldn't be firm on that one, but it is clearly there in 2013.
Thanks.
One question I do have to Madeline is for the provision for the construction of the building and it being specific to the addition and the portion of the existing, what exactly does that entail? Does that stop us from putting new siding on, new windows? Like, can we upgrade the existing? What kind of is that
Thank you. Through you, Chair Stone. It wouldn't stop you from putting new siding or new windows. It's more to limit the entire existing dwelling being demolished and rebuilt in that location.
Thank you. That's
That's
all
it?
I have. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Council, any comments or questions? Councilor Renwick.
Just briefly, but thank you, Chair Stone. My question as well was regarding the sauna. I love a sauna. Saunas are great. So you're saying that it was existing there in 2013, perhaps, and that, correct?
Yes, it shows on the aerial views on the GeoHub that the sauna was existing there in the pictures. So the owners don't have any documentation of exactly when it was built, but that is the one thing that we can find for somewhat of a date.
Right, okay. And that one of the provisions is that we recognize that structure now, because there's no building permit that was allocated for it. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Seeing none. Moved by Councilor Schumacher, seconded by Councilor Renwick. Be it resolved that Planning Council provisionally approve the Community Planning Permit Application CPP 80 2023 HTE. The purpose and effect of which is to permit the construction of a 50 square meter addition to the existing legal non-complying single detached dwelling and a 10 square meter porch, and provide relief from subsections 2.4.4, 2.15.7, 2.16.3, and 4.3.4 of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97. 2, increase the maximum permitted shoreline activity area width from 9.5 meters to 15 meters for a 50 square meter addition to an existing 60 square meter legal non-complying single detached dwelling. Reduce the setback from a cold water lake from 30 meters to 9 meters for a 50 square meter addition to an existing 63 square meter legal non-complying single detached dwelling. Reduce the setback from a cold water lake from 30 meters to 15 meters for a 10 square meter detached or attached porch. Permit an expansion to an existing 63 square meter legal non-complying single detached dwelling. Reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 9 meters for a 50 square meter addition to an existing 63 square meter legal non-complying single detached dwelling. Reduce the required front yard setback from 20 meters to 15 meters for a 10 square meter attached porch. Increase the maximum permit primary lot coverage from 5% to 7.5% for a 50 square meter addition to an existing 63 square meter non-complying single detached dwelling and a 10 square meter attached porch, and recognize the location of an existing 10 square meter sauna. Conditional on conditions of provisional approval as attached in attachment number 1 to report DEV 2023-110 being fulfilled, and further that upon the conditions of approval, provisional approval, being fulfilled in accordance with subsection 1.17 of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97 as amended, a Class 3 Community Planning Permit be issued to authorize the above described development conditional on development being carried out in accordance with the conditions as listed in attachment number 2 to report DEV 2023-110. Holy mackerel. Comments or questions? All in favor? Should I read it again? That's carried. Wow. Thanks, Madeline. All right. Kelsey is going to speak to the Wolf application, and Councillor Morrison has declared a conflict.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 41 Florence Street West. The lot is designated urban residential and is within the urban residential low precinct. The applications have been submitted for the creation of 2 urban residential lots. Severed Lot 1 would have an area of approximately 1,537 square meters and 24 meters of frontage on Rice Lane. And the second lot would have the same area with 48 meters of frontage on Rice Lane. The retained would have an area of approximately 6,234 square meters with 15 meters of frontage on Florence Street West. So you can see the two lots here, and then the retained goes up to Florence Street, as you can see in this image. So a zoning bylaw application was brought to Planning Committee June 15th, 2022. At the time, there was outstanding concerns regarding the unevaluated wetland, road improvements, entrances, and access. Sorry. The rezoning application, so at that meeting, it was postponed, and then the rezoning application was withdrawn because it was determined that the frontages were sufficient. Because how we measure frontage, it's from the front yard setback, so these are kind of oddly shaped lots, so it worked out that they were compliant. And so then we removed the rezoning application, it was withdrawn, and then the applicant asked to have their application considered at Committee of Adjustment because there was the outstanding issues regarding the unevaluated wetlands, road improvements, entrances, and accesses. There was also a letter of objection. So therefore, when staff took the report forward to Committee of Adjustment on September 14th, 2022, we recommended denial. And at the time, committee also decided to postpone the application until a study was completed for the wetland. So this study has now been provided, and information has been shared with Operations and Public Works to ensure that there's an adequate entrance and access and place for snow storage and turnaround for our snowplows. So here you can see circled is the area that was determined. So there was a study here's the map from the study, which delineates the boundary of the wetland and then also provides a 15-meter buffer. So there is a portion there available for a turnaround that our operations team met on site to determine. So yeah, the review was prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, and they concluded that it is a wetland community in the southeast portion of the property and recommended this buffer, as well as some construction mitigation measures such as low impact development measures, which are outlined in the report. We are recommending that a 5126 agreement is conditioned to ensure that these recommendations are fulfilled and implemented upon development of the two lots. Oh, there I show again the little area. So here's some images of the properties. So the application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. Operations and Public Works provided comments on the initial submission that there were some concerns about the road, being that it's only 10 meters wide. So they have met with the applicant on site to find out the area that's suitable for the turnaround. And they have determined this, and it is a condition within the consent that this area is dedicated to the town. A further letter of objection from the same person was also received from the neighboring residents, which spoke to the capacity of the road and traffic concerns. But as noted, Operations and Protective Services Department would require the road improvements for access to the proposed lot, specifically improving the turnaround and for snow storage. So with these measures, we believe that the comments were adequately addressed, given that there will be improvements to the road. So based on staff's review, the application appears to conform with the policies within the official plan and be consistent with the provincial policy statement. And therefore, staff are recommending approval. Thank you so much. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments. Uh-oh. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Stone, Your Worship, members of council. Karen Terziano, I'm just here to represent Jane and Bob Wolf. As I've sat at this table for about a dozen years, I might be a little bit better versed in what goes on, might not either. And Kelsey, thanks for the report. As Kelsey outlined, I think everything that was asked to be addressed was with the environmental study, And I know Bob had several meetings with Brandon Hall on site to determine the proper location for either turnaround, storage, or both, however they were going to get that done. So I'm just here to answer any easy questions, but I would request one amendment to the resolution which removes the 5% cash in lieu as the land is being dedicated and deeded to the town. So it just seems like an overreach to ask for both. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council members, any comments or questions? I'll go to Mayor Alcock first.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you, Kelsey, for the report, and the applicant's representative for her comments. I'm glad you raised the issue around waiving the 5%. I did have some preliminary discussions just around that, and certainly I had posed the question as to how appropriate it was. It seems appropriate from my perspective for a number of reasons. One, you had raised the idea that given the applicant has already engaged in road improvements specifically around the turnaround, I do feel that there is already something that the applicant is putting towards this proposal. So the other is that we are looking to do more development, density development within our urban core. So this is creation of 2 new lots, and that's a good thing. But I do support the idea of consideration of waiving the 5%, because I'm not sure how much that would be from an expenditure point of view, but I think it could be something substantial. So I would support waiving that 5%.
Thanks very much. Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone. And once again, I would concur with the mayor. I do believe as well that the 5% cash in lieu is a bit of an overreach. I think the fact that the town has been piling snow in that location, and now that the owners have actually given the piece of land to the town, I think I would be okay seconding that motion if you want to remove the 5% cash in lieu.
Kelsey, you'd like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify that this is, the cash in lieu amount is allowable by municipalities just to ensure that as we develop and grow, that we have money set aside for parkland when parkland is not being provided by consent. And then in this particular case, the land that's being dedicated to the town is to serve to create those 2 lots. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
All right, thanks very much. Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair Stone. Just down the other line, I noticed they identified the water and sewer line coming down. Is it at the capacity to be able to service 2 more lots?
Kelsey?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair, we did receive no objections from the district, and they did comment and attend the pre-consultation and said initially it was no concern, and not seeing any further comments from them. And I believe I did reach out, sorry, it's been a long-standing application, that there was no concerns in terms of a connection.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Chair Stone. It's nice to see this come back. Thanks for the report and the diligence of the applicant, because I know it was frustrating when we first saw this come through. So what a great opportunity to create another lot in town, which we need many more to create to meet current requirements and future requirements. So good job, everyone, and I'm happy to support this.
I agree. Well said. Any other comments or questions? So there's an addition?
No, the condition, the amendment, this is the original, the amendment is to remove this condition. If we're going to look at that.
1 second. So it's in here, ask them to pay for it. We want to not pay.
Right, so this is the original.
Yeah.
So the amendment was to remove that condition.
All right. So is there an amendment? And we have a mover and seconder? Correct? All right. I'm going to read the original motion. Moved by Deputy Mayor Armour, seconded by Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve consent applications B 2829, 2022 HTE for the creation of 2 new residential lots, conditional on the registerable description of the severed lots being submitted to the clerk, including all rights of ways and easements, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. The owner's taxes being in good standing. A site inspection fee of $255 being paid to the town of Huntsville. A consent finalization fee in the amount of $200 being paid to the town of Huntsville. 5% cash in lieu of parkland being paid to the town of Huntsville on the severed lands. A turnaround being constructed, dedicated, and assumed to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville to provide access to the severed and retained lots and an appropriate snow storage area. And the owner entering into and registering on title an agreement pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended to require implementation of recommendations from the wetland review prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc., dated August 1, 2023, through a community planning permit. That's the original motion. And we have an amendment. Moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that the following condition be removed. 5% cash in lieu of parkland being paid to the town of Huntsville on the severed lands. Discussions on the amendment? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just quickly, I'm a little hesitant to waive the 5%, as these funds help us get many things done, as I'm sure Council's aware. However, we're solving the snow removal issues that the applicant has and will have with the development of these lots, so I think I'll support it because of the circumstances in this case. Certainly would have to think about it for other cases as they come up.
Mayor Alcock.
I really appreciate Councillor Clark's comments, and I normally would be reluctant, absolutely, to do this on an ongoing basis because I think 5% is really important. But for exactly the same reason that you mentioned, which is that the applicant is already making accommodation to support the snow removal, I think it's important.
Any other comments on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? And that's carried. All in favor as the main motion as amended? And that's carried. Thank you, former Mayor Terziano, and I bet you miss planning days like this. All right. Richard is going to speak to the Highview Drive application.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. You may recall these applications were before you last month, September 13th, and at that time the matter was postponed to provide additional time to consider the zoning reliefs that were being asked for in recognition of the fact that the town was requesting a widening off the front of the property. Since that time, the applicant's agent has looked at the zoning reliefs and advised staff on what the appropriate reliefs would be. And the matter's back before you for approval, recommending approval of the, here is the slightly tweaked concept plan for the property. As you can see, the main difference is the garages have been pushed back approximately 2 meters in recognition of the fact that 2 meters was taken off the front of the property. So this modification allows for a 6-meter driveway depth. So the reliefs have been outlined by the applicant's agent and they're listed. They involve reductions in the front yard from 7 meters to 2.5, 6 meters, and 0 meters for the dwelling, attached garage, and covered porch, respectively. They involve a reduction in the rear yard from 10 meters to 4 meters for portions of the dwelling or the structure that would have a garage on the ground level and dwelling on top. And they involve relief for lot area for the various types of dwelling units to be included in this proposal. And they also include relief for lot coverage, again, for the various different types of dwelling units included in this proposal. And then we're also asking for a 1.6 meter high privacy fence along the rear yards. So those are all things that are before you. And then, of course, we're also dealing with a draft plan of subdivision application, and we're recommending that that draft plan be conditionally approved, and so the recommendation includes conditions of approval to send to the district. And that's all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
That's plenty, thank you. I'll call on the applicant or their representative.
There we go. Good afternoon, members of council. My name is Savas Radas, Plant Muskoka. I don't really have anything to add, I'd say. I think Richard's covered that off. It's tight, but it works. And we're hoping that we can push this along through the district soon after this. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Wonderful, thank you. Questions of council? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Chair Stone. Love to see this great example of something that works, that fits, to create some housing. I know we were throwing numbers around last time this came to us, and unfortunately we didn't have the ability to come up with a solution. Hopefully we can advance these things through in a more expedient manner to help the developers out, to get these badly needed housing commitments from them. So I'm happy to approve this. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Holy mackerel. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that Planning Council approves zoning bylaw amendment application Z 30/2022 HTE, changing the zoning on the subject lands from residential 2 holding zone to a residential 3 holding with exception zone. With exceptions to reduce the minimum required front yard setback for a dwelling, an attached garage, and a covered porch from 7 meters to 2.5 meters, 6 meters, and 0 meters. Reduce the minimum required rear yard setback for a dwelling from 10 meters to 6 meters. Reduce the minimum required rear yard setback for an attached garage with habitable space above from 10 meters to 4 meters. Reduce the minimum lot area for an end exterior unit townhouse dwelling from 315 square meters to 250 square meters. Reduce the minimum lot area for a semi-detached dwelling from 345 square meters to 250 square meters. Reduce the minimum lot area for an interior unit townhouse dwelling from 220 square meters to 190 square meters. Increase the maximum permitted primary lot coverage for an interior unit townhouse dwelling unit, an end/exterior unit townhouse dwelling, and a semi-detached dwelling from 35% to 54%, 42%, and 42%. Well, is that right? Is it?
Yeah, we're providing relief for a townhouse dwelling unit, an exterior unit, townhouse dwelling unit, and a semi-detached dwelling. All are 3 different types of dwelling units, and they'll all get 3 different types of coverage.
Thank you for the clarification. And require a 1.6 meter high privacy fence to be installed along the rear yacht line for each lot. And further that the holding H provision may be removed once adequate infrastructure has been constructed or secured, including water, sewer servicing, stormwater management systems, sidewalks, and a road widening, and any necessary development agreements are entered into. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Don't go away, there's always more. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the District Municipality of Muskoka be advised that the Council of the Town of Huntsville has no objections to the conditional approval of draft plan of subdivision application S 2022-12, subject to conditions as noted in attachment number 1 to report DEV 2023-105, and further that the Director of Development Services or designate forward a copy of report Development 2023-105 to the District Municipality of Muskoka for their consideration. Comments? All in favor? And that's carried. Wow. All right. Thank you, Richard and Savis. Moving on. Director Maxwell is going to speak to us about the Housing Task Force.
Thank you, Chair Stone. As you will note in the report that was provided, the province asked all mayors of municipalities to submit their top 5 housing task force recommendations that they felt would be the most helpful in order to instigate more housing in their municipalities. And so, yes, the Provincial Housing Task Force, sorry, Mayor Alcock, not the District of Muskoka Housing Task Force. So staff went through all of the recommendations with the mayor and the CAO, and we suggested our 5 that we felt would have the most impact locally. And they've all been listed in the report. And then as well, we added a couple in that we thought make sense if they're tweaked a little bit too. And if the province wished to have any more input, we would provide it, obviously. But, and we're here to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions of Director Maxwell? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you very much, Director Maxwell. I got to read over those 74 items. It's a lot, and I appreciate all the efforts to bring our initiatives forward. It's funny, when you read through the 74 items, at least every second one or every third one is speed and getting rid of hurdles, and I think we're taking steps now to do that, which is great. I wonder steps moving forward. Of course, as a community wellness navigator, one of my arms of that role is housing, and I've got about 30 different ideas on housing right now, so I don't know if we're doing more correspondence. I'd love to be invited. I don't know when I should share those items is, I guess, the question. So if there's another meeting coming up, I'd love to attend, and we can chat about some of my ideas and initiatives and see if some of them are silly, some of them are useful, and go from there.
Did you want to speak to that, or no?
I was going to just add that I think it'll be very helpful with the District 2.0 Housing Task Force as well, that we'll be able to flesh things out a bit more. So.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. And just in response to Councillor Morrison, absolutely, for sure, if we have other internal discussions around housing, this was specifically to respond to the province's recommendations, and it was a tight turnaround. It was odd that it came to the mayors. Frankly, I'm not sure where this goes. But when we actually have internal discussions here that we actually think we can make meaningful change, no question, you'll be part of that.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
If it's along the same line, mine has to do with actually 65. Develop and legislate a clear province-wide definition of affordable housing to create certainty and predictability. What is that? Like, how can you come up with a defined definition? Is it a group of things, or is it just one thing? Is it, I'm just curious.
That is a very good question. The province did just publish some form of a definition where they're tying it to income levels as well. And I think that's going to be really complicated for areas like us that aren't the housing service manager for, so we don't see incomes for people. So I think we'd like something really simple, in essence.
Right, so just so quickly, something like a housing or rent support from the district, stuff like that, would all fall in that same category?
Yeah, exactly.
Councillor Morrison first.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I just want to reiterate too, My comment wasn't to say that I should have been at the other meetings. They sound kind of boring, to be truthful. And you guys did a lot of work on that. And so, yeah, my point was more of like going forward. But also want to acknowledge Director Maxwell, Mayor Alcock, and myself sitting on the Muskoka Housing Task Force 2.0. And if any of you saw the minutes, it was a very exciting meeting. Like, there's a lot of people around that table that are pumped about that. I think we've discussed this at this table already. So I think I'd like to see some of the stuff we come up with here be duplicated in all 6 municipalities in the district. It could be awesome. So.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. It was really just in response to Deputy Mayor Armour's comment. That was their recommendation. So we just acknowledged it by saying, yes, that would be a good idea, because they've made all sorts of statements with very little clarity as to what affordable means. And so we were just acknowledging and saying that would be very helpful.
Any other questions or comments? I see none. All right, let's get out of here. Moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councilor Schumacher. Be it resolved, the confirmation bylaw 2023-113 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time. Finally passed this 11th day of October 2023. What? What's going on?
The notice provisions of the planning act. There's no resolution.
Oh, there's no resolution in the planning.
No, this 7.1.
So do I have anything?
No, it's discussion.
So what do I have to do?
Second.
Kirsten, will you speak about the notice provisions in the Planning Act? Holy mackerel.
Thank you very much, Chair Stone. I just wanted to provide council with an update on a bit of a hiccup that we've run into. With the closing of Metroland and their publication of actual print newspapers, we've run into a problem when it comes to providing notice of planning applications. Not the everyday applications that are site-specific to one property, but the more comprehensive ones that would involve notice and affect potentially all the properties in Huntsville. So the one that is pending is our housekeeping for the CPP that we talked about at September's council meeting. So normally, the Planning Act says that you can provide notice in a newspaper that you deem as of sufficient circulation, or you provide mailed notice to every affected property owner. So we had not had any luck with the province trying to help us through the Planning Act legislation to say whether or not they felt that a digital newspaper was sufficient. And so we have a legal opinion that says that no, a digital newspaper is not sufficient. So it has to be a printed newspaper, or you do mail notice. So we are going to be putting a resolution onto, hopefully with council's approval, onto the next regular council agenda to ask that the province figure this out for us and change the legislation, because it will affect, I think, probably of the 440 municipalities, 250 of them when it comes to any major planning initiatives that they bring forward. So that will be a resolution that will be up on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Through you to Kirsten. So the mail out would actually have to go to everybody in the municipality with respect to the CPP. So in the meantime, when we have that resolution asking the province to fix it, we then can't go forward with any amendments like that.
No, the next opportunity that we would have that wouldn't incur additional, well, substantial additional costs would be, we could include something with the tax mail out that happens in February. So we could do something at that point that would provide notice of a public meeting of a potential change we're making, but that would be our only opportunity. It would involve us spending, I don't know, would it be $20,000 for?
If I may, a follow-up. So another, you made reference to site-specific wouldn't be covered with this. So a large development, redevelopment in our downtown, is that site-specific?
That
so
would be
that's
considered
fine.
site-specific.
So we're really only worried about OP amendments and CPP amendments. And right now, CPP amendments are, as you say, housekeeping. So it's not as urgent, perhaps. I don't need to panic yet.
I guess it
It's
depends.
urgent, for sure. It's
From-
urgent. I'm not denying that.
From
I'm
staff's
just-
perspective, we're quite concerned because there are some of the housekeeping amendments that we
That
felt
are
were
really
really
critical.
important and
Yeah.
would help, especially with the province trying to encourage us all to put in as much housing as we can, as quickly as we can. Now we're being delayed.
Yeah, my apologies. I shouldn't have said that it's not, it is urgent, and I was just trying to define exactly what will be affected, okay? And, all right, thank you.
Councillor Morrison.
I guess, Director Maxwell, do we know what it would cost to send out something to everybody on the CPP amendment?
I believe we have just over 14,000 properties in Huntsville, so it would be one notice to each of those 14,000 property owners, and it has to be by mail. We're not allowed to do a bulk mail, sort of, like flyers go. I don't think that would constitute proper notice under the Planning Act.
Any other questions for Director Maxwell? All right, getting back to what I was doing before I was interrupted. The confirmation bylaw, you all heard it? All in favor? And that's carried. And lastly, moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Be it resolved that we do now hereby adjourn at 2:36 p.m. All in favor? And that's carried.